I think the majority of our community already knows you.
I am Rob Nudds, the manager of partnerships for Fratello watches.com. I think we need visionaries, passionate visionaries that want to help watchmaking survive rather than just going along with the old conservative lines, which we've all been saying for years.
Dear watch community, today I want to talk about watches, our Fratello partnership, and other good stuff. For this, we invited Rob Nudds from Fratello to our Fortis workshop. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks, Dario. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm very, very happy to be here, as always.
Great. I think the majority of our community already knows you.
Really?
But for those who don't, who are you?
Well, as you correctly stated, I am Rob Nudds, the manager of partnerships for Fratello watches.com, which means that I work with our brand partners on media plans, the creation of special editions, and I do that from the perspective of a former watchmaker. That's who I am, yeah.
That's a lot.
In a nutshell.
That's a lot. But I mean, in our watch industry, there's not many people like you, I think.
Well, I'd hope not. For the sake of the watch
You're
industry.
unique. You're a watchmaker. Mm-hmm. You were a sales manager. Like for international, for how many countries?
17.
Wow, that's impressive. And now you are writing about watches.
Yeah, now I'm writing about watches, but I've also transitioned into this role, like I said, as brand partnership manager, which means I'm doing less writing than before and now working on product development, which is a really exciting step to have taken.
We come to that later, that's very interesting. But what I want to know, and I'm sure our community as well, which was the least fun job you had?
Oh man, in the watchmaking industry. So before I was a watchmaker, I was also in retail, like direct to consumer.
That was not fun
retail.
At all, right?
That was difficult. Like my very first job was for H. Samuels in the UK, which is a high street retailer. And that was when I fell in love with watches. I was 17 when I started working there. And I was responsible for battery changes and strap changes and just keeping the displays looking nice. I didn't really have to know too much about the industry. In fact, I knew nothing, but I knew that I wanted to be part of it. However, it was probably also the worst job I had in the industry because we didn't just sell watches, we also sold all kinds of things like house ornaments, the kind of ornaments that you don't imagine anyone would ever buy. People tend to buy them as gifts for people in their family they don't like very much, I think. And people would come in with, looking for these incredible monstrosities, these porcelain dolls that they would buy for people, and I had to serve them as well at the same time. I was never interested in it, to be honest.
So that was your first touch point with watches?
Yeah.
It was quartz watches with very cheap silicone straps, or what was it?
Well, when it was quartz watches with cheap accessories, that was a bit easier because I didn't have to worry about damaging them. But I remember once I had to change a battery in a Rolex quartz watch, and I used the wrong chuck in the case back press, and I smashed the glass when I put the back on. And I got into quite a lot of trouble for that, quite rightly so. I didn't realize how much trouble I should have got into at the time, but looking back on it now, it horrifies me.
So what happens then? You call Rolex and you say, I smashed down?
Yeah, in those days it was a little bit easier. We had a bit more of a direct chain of communication with the brand and they responded a little quicker, so I got away with it. But could have been worse. If I'd actually gone so far through the glass, I destroyed the dial, then yeah.
But when was your moment when you felt like, oh my God, watches are amazing. I want to stay in this watch industry for my whole life?
I guess I was about 20 and I was in the middle of a degree in archaeological science, which I'd started doing at the University of Sheffield because I lost a bet to my best friend. And that resulted in me just picking the first degree alphabetically in the prospectus. And I was a little bit disengaged with it as a subject, although I do find it fascinating now from a hobbyist perspective. And I'd got a job working in a clothing design company, and I was making clothes then. And I realized that archaeology wasn't the future for me, and I wanted to get into something, it's not the future for anybody really, but I wanted to do something else with my hands, something more practical. And I had drilled down to either tailoring or watchmaking. And I'm not sure what inspired the watchmaking obsession then, if it wasn't for my early experience of H. Samuel. I guess it must have been, but I had it in my mind that it was one of those two things. So I ordered a huge amount of catalogs from brands, fashion brands and watchmaking brands. And I received a Lange & Söhne catalog in the post with a handwritten note from someone in their marketing department thanking me for requesting a catalog. And I was a 20-year-old, less than a penniless student. There was not an invoice, no, fantastically. But that's the thing, I couldn't believe that it was free because the Lange catalogue, I don't know if they still make it in the same way, but the production values were insane. It was this big, thick book with beautiful photography, a great history of the brand. And I was flicking through this and I was looking at those movements and the German silver and the blued screws, and I was, oh my goodness, like I have to be as close to this as I possibly can for the rest of my life. So that started a serious focus, and it took me about 5 or 6 years before I managed to get sponsorship to do my WASTEP qualification at the British School of Watchmaking, and I managed to get sponsorship through the Swatch Group, so I became an Omega apprentice in, I think, 2010, if memory serves.
So WASTEP is a watchmaking school, right?
Right, so it's an international training facility, effectively. Watchmakers of Switzerland Training and Education Program is what it stands for. And they have schools all around the world. I can't remember where they all are exactly. Mine was in Manchester. There's definitely one in Miami. And the main one is just down the road in Neuchâtel here. And they don't turn out too many graduates per year. They are increasing the amount of students they're taking in. But when I graduated in 2012, I was one of 6 in the UK. So they need to step it up, I think, internationally.
Is there enough watchmakers in the UK?
No, not really. There aren't. But the industry in the UK is mostly a retail industry. We do have some after sales, but most complex jobs go back to Switzerland regardless. So most of the big groups have a service centre in the UK for ease of shipping and taking care of things like battery changes or reseals or, I don't know, slight movement adjustments. But then when you have a highly complicated piece, it tends to go back to the Swiss anyway.
Yeah. So if I'm 20 years old or 19 years old, I'm going to university and I want to enter the watchmaking industry. I mean, you started as a watchmaker and then you incrementally build up your career, and et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? Should a man like me, 20 years old, start a career in the watch industry as a watchmaker, or what is the best entry point?
Oh, wow, that is a good question. I suppose it helps if you have an end goal in mind of where you want to be, which I did, actually. I didn't anticipate, well, this here, sitting across from you, an incredibly mature 20-year-old by the sounds of this story. I always wanted to be on this side of things. And the truth of the matter is, my journey into watchmaking was, because of that, somewhat contrived. I wanted to be the best watch journalist in the world. And I thought the only way I could do that was if I knew more about watches than everybody else. And I thought there was no better way to do that than to actually become a watchmaker myself. So it took several years of applications, of course, and I kept myself busy honing my writing skills in the meantime. Started my own zine and blog and edited for other people for free just to get more experience. And yeah, when I had that chance, I took it. I worked in the industry for a few years thereafter, and I never anticipated the step into sales account management. That was a complete fluke, which I just grabbed with both hands when the opportunity presented itself to me. But eventually, after that period of my career was done, I came to where I wanted to be from the very start, which was here, writing about watches and getting the chance to collaborate with brands directly.
And what do you think when you started in the watch industry, what has changed in the last couple of years, if you compare it to now?
I mean, it's very difficult to distill the changes. Watchmaking moves very slowly, the trends within it move very quickly, and it's hard to analyze what will stick long term of the new things we are seeing. I think now there are far more have-a-go hero brands, as I say, these startups with an idea that is normally just design-based and a desire to pull back the curtain of the industry and to establish a more transparent way of doing business. You didn't see that so much when I first got into watchmaking. It was very removed and aloof and within itself. And I think now the younger people in the industry are trying to open those doors a little bit more, because I think the next generation of watch lovers, which we need to attract to the industry in some way, appreciate the kind of honesty that hadn't been a part of the industry when I got into it.
I think there is less watch lovers as managing positions in this watch industry. Do you agree?
100%. And I think there's actually a very good reason for that. When I first got into watchmaking, I was one of the earliest of this generation to be trained in watchmaking, especially in the UK. There was maybe a 20-year gap in which watchmakers weren't trained, and it ceased to be a viable career option because, in large part, of the quartz crisis around the end of the 70s, and then throughout the 80s when watchmaking had to redefine itself. there weren't enough people getting into the industry, which meant that the people who had to take up the management positions in the companies in which I worked when watchmaking became a more lucrative business again were not really the most dynamic or passionate or insightful of people. They were just the last men standing after a dearth of talent being added to the industry. So I think we'll see that change in the future. I think that it's going to be more necessary than ever. I think that running a watchmaking company like a business, while that still works now for the major brands because they have to focus on reputational protection more than anything else, will cease, and we'll see more people like Jupp, the CEO of Fortis, taking the helm, because that's what the industry wants to see. Passionate people, genuine collectors, people that want to share that with a wider audience.
Well, but I challenge you now, because I think we talked about that yesterday, and a very core topic I always want to cover, consolidation in our watch industry. So if you think like big brands becoming bigger, micro brands, if they position themselves in the right way, they will have success, but if they don't, they will fade away. And you told me yourself that there's a big transformation now going on. A lot of brands will change or not even survive. And now you're telling me that there is more people like Jupp, more passionate people in the watch industry. So do you think, where is the watch industry in the next couple of years?
Well, I think we need more people like Jupp. I don't think there are many at all, but I think we need that, definitely. And I think to your question about the state of management as it is at the moment, that does need to change. And I think we need visionaries, really passionate visionaries that want to help watchmaking survive, rather than just digging their heels in and going along with the old conservative lines, which we've all been saying for years, because it always worked. Now it's going to change. Obviously, the smartwatch revolution didn't really happen in the way we predicted when that technology became viable, but I imagine that wearable tech will become more and more integral to our daily lives, how we interact with each other in the physical world.
Do you wear smartwatches?
I own one. I bought an Apple Watch a few months ago. Probably should have done more research, because I bought the cellular version, which theoretically means I can use it without my phone. So I could just be running with my headphones in, and if I get a call, I could answer it. Didn't think to check that where you buy the watch, so I bought mine in Germany, despite having an English phone, defines where you can use the watch as a cellular item. So I have this watch with the cellular function, and because my phone's from England and my watch is from Germany, they aren't compatible. So, yeah, probably.
Well, it doesn't happen with a Fortis, I guess.
No, it doesn't happen with a Fortis. I've never had that problem before, but I bought one because I wanted to know what I was talking about, I guess. I've commented on the smartwatch revolution, or their influx into the industry and what effect it might have on price point competitors and the entry-level luxury many times from a theoretical perspective, but when it comes to using those products, I was a bit in the dark. So I thought it's about time. I stumped up, I don't know, 500 euros for one of these new Apple Watches. And I have really tried to find ways to use it that are relevant to me. And I like the heart rate monitor. I downloaded a couple of skiing apps for the first time I went skiing. And
what's a skiing app, though?
Well, you start it when you set off at the top of the slopes, and it'll tell you how fast you're going.
Can you show your thumb to the camera, please?
I mean,
tell the story about that. I mean, that comes from skiing.
It comes from skiing, yeah. Surprisingly, I got my thumb trapped under my ski, which was a weird moment to find out I was a lot more flexible than I thought I was, because my leg was, where it shouldn't have been.
And how did the skiing app help you?
In that moment, it was useless.
Oh.
Completely useless, yeah. But it was very interesting and took my mind off the immediate aftermath of the injury when I was sitting in the cafe, glaring at my girlfriend for accidentally taking me on a red slope for the first time, because I was a complete novice, and she knows what she's doing, and I have no clue.
So red is the second most?
Yeah, the second most. There's 5-year-old kids like zooming past me with no bother, no sticks, no nothing, eyes closed. But I was like grinding down the mountain like an old turtle. But anyway, I was sitting in the cafe looking through my phone where I downloaded the data from it. It tells you how far you skied, what your maximum speed was, what your average...
How hard you fell.
How hard I fell, yeah. How much I yelped like a kicked puppy when I hit the ground, but yeah.
So in my opinion, I think that smartwatches will survive. They will become better, especially with the more health apps we have, the more useful it will be. So they're here to stay. But in my opinion, mechanical watches will also stay. I always compare it with cars. So in fact, from Monday to Friday, you drive your Tesla to work because it's very convenient and it's more sustainable. But then on Saturday and Sunday, you take your 911 out because it's more cool. There is no tech, you know. There is not this digital monitor in your chassis and stuff. So what do you think? Where is the smartwatch in the future competing against mechanical watch, or is it just standing next to the mechanical watch?
No, one thing I've said for a long time, and one of my favorite sound bites, is this is a territorial war more than anything else. It's not an ideological one whatsoever. The two products may well occupy the same part of our bodies as it stands, but they don't go head to head in any other way whatsoever. Are they fashionable things? Well, maybe watches within the same price bracket as a smartwatch could be considered more of a fashion item than a true luxury watch. So yeah, maybe they'll suffer. Those direct competitors might fall out. We don't know if the smart technology will stay on the wrist. Even if it does, I'm not worried about its effects on the industry in general. Watchmaking is not under threat, but I do think certain portions of the industry, like I said to you yesterday, will just drop out or disappear or cease to be as relevant. But the luxury items, the really high-end stuff, I mean, look at what happened throughout the financial crisis or even the pandemic. Those segments of the market boomed. While everybody else was struggling, the rich just got richer, and the richest portion of our industry continued to get richer as well. So the concept of watchmaking, not a problem. Will luxury watches return to the pocket? Will tailoring and watchmaking conspire to see mechanical watches become more like carryable artifacts as they were once upon a time? Perhaps. It depends how trends align or don't. But no, I've seen plenty of creative enough straps that put the smart unit on the underside of a strap and the luxury watch on the top of the wrist. I see guys double wristing.
Horrible as well.
Well, that one is more palatable to me. I did double wrist myself while I was skiing because I had my Fortis on one wrist and the Apple Watch on the other. So I am not against it entirely.
So I think we definitely need more visionaries like Joop.
Yeah.
I think you also work for a visionary for RJ.
Yes, I do.
Robert Jan at Fratello. What is the spirit at Fratello? Can you talk a little bit more about RJ himself?
Well, he's a fantastic character, a good friend, and always a pleasure to work with. He doesn't take himself too seriously. Certainly doesn't take the industry too seriously, which is refreshing. He was, I think, really the first major blogger in the watch industry when he founded Fratello in 2004, so we're not too far away from our 20th anniversary of existence. And when he founded Fratello, I don't think he had any idea what he'd done. And Hodinkee didn't come along till 4 years after, of course, and he and Ben are good friends, and they, lent on each other in the early years, sharing ideas and strategies and how to grow. And Hodinkee went off and did Hodinkee's thing, and it's become, I'd say, the preeminent men's lifestyle brand in the world now, separate from its role originally as a watch blog exclusively. It's now something more. And Fratello has really emulated RJ's sort of perception in the industry. We're kind of more accessible, I think, a little more friendly. We're a bunch of nerds, middle-aged losers running around the world trying on watches and, like big kids messing around with expensive toys because we're lucky enough to do that. And our community responds to that in a very positive fashion, I believe. I think what's different about Fratello now is the engagement and the warmth, the obvious connectedness of our community with us and with each other. And we're really proud of that. And that is in RJ's image, as it were, as a guy. If you want to go for a beer, he'll sit down with anybody and chat to anybody about anything. And probably make several inappropriate jokes within a few seconds of having met you, but,
But how can you translate this warmth, as you said, and your character as Fratello into your editorial work, into just to show your customers and readers? Because this is a big challenge of Fortis, to be honest. Because our team has quite the same, how can I say, hands-on mentality, really workers' mentality, being upfront there. And but sometimes it's hard in a cold world to get that warmth outside of the company.
Well, I think the key is we're genuine. We put that front and center of everything we do. And our warmth is towards our readers, not towards the industry. So we have brand partnerships as we're partners with you. And those brand partnerships don't function like brand partnerships function with most other media outlets.
Okay.
So This is my desire to change this, because I feel as we as Fratello move into a more e-commerce channel and we start selling watches to people, we can't have traditional advertorial existing in the same way as we always did. You know, people used to pay for what was basically rewritten press releases on a site, even like ours. And I always thought that was very difficult to have that alongside real editorial. And so we're trying to, firstly, we took a step to eliminate that entirely. So there's no way that a brand can ghostwrite something for us or send us a press release and have us just regurgitate it in our own words. That hasn't happened for a couple of years, not since I've been involved with the advertorial side of things with Fratello. What we were doing is basically selling preferential positions on the website. So you'll have a Watch of the Week column, and it is effectively a real editorial where the writer's allowed to say what they think about the watch, no holds barred. But that article will be held on the homepage for 1 week.
But the brand is paying you.
The brand pays for that preferential position, but they can't buy our opinions. Now, we say that very openly, and I think a lot of brands maybe took us to just be saying it as posturing, but when it came down to it, we would always write nice things about them because they paid for the position. When they found out that wasn't the case, and we have had a couple of occasions this year where we have annoyed some of our partners, we reiterated the fact that if we do not say what we think, our community that we've spent the last 18 years building from the ground up will lose faith in us overnight, and we don't want to be that. Ultimately, we want to design watches with brands that we believe in. We still want to cover all of their core collection, but we want to have influence in the industry manifested in these products that the community that follows us and supports us and makes us what we are can buy into. And ultimately, my goal is to effectively remove advertorial and focus on that side as well. And then the editorial content, that's how we cultivate that warmth, because we bring the readers into the article and we say, okay, this is how it is really. This is what we think. We're passionate about this for this reason, for that reason. This is where it sits in the context of watchmaking, and the brand should do this, 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 and this if they care about really getting your attention. And if you read a lot of our editorials and even the advertorial positions, like I say, because they're approached in the same manner, you will see that there is this overarching ethos of how to talk to brands and talk to the audience and make sure that we stay true to ourselves.
But, I mean, don't bite the hand that feeds you. I think this is really what you realized, okay, we don't bite the hand because we're just honest. But then you earn money just for our community to understand where's the money coming from? Where's the cash flow coming from?
So at the moment, we still have media partnerships with brands. And although it doesn't affect the nature of the content, like I say, they can have a brand of the month position where we focus on like a major release of theirs for a year, and it holds itself on the homepage. Because we publish 3 to 5 articles a day. And these articles initially hit the top of the website, and then as a new one comes in, they are replaced and move down and move down and move down the homepage. So within a couple of days, an article has gone from the homepage, and if you missed it, you'd have to search for it or know that it was there. With these preferential position posts, the article just stays put in a slot for a set amount of time, either a month or a week.
But you also do a lot of limited editions with brands.
Well, we're building up now. We're really ramping that up. We have done 2 Speedy Tuesday models, and they were both massive successes when they came out, of course, and they were with Omega. We have done a model with Frederick Constant, a model with Oris, and last year we stepped it up to do 3 in 1 year. We did one with Benaze, one with Chapek, and one with Nomos.
How do you avoid that? I mean, I've seen so many Hodinkee limited editions now.
Yeah, at
I
least
love
37.
Hodinkee. I have much respect for this brand.
Yeah.
It's really a brand. It was also the first, when I got into watches, Hodinkee helped me to get more involved into the watch industry. But there are so many limited editions now, I don't even get it, you know?
Well, I think the concept of limited editions is a contentious one, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. I prefer special editions or exclusives, maybe, to design something that is just nice. Doesn't have to have a crazy, stupid story behind it. Doesn't have to be like my lifelong dream to have made this watch. When I was writing the justification for the projects that we did last year, like the Chapek and the Nomos, you know, there was long-winded stories building up to those watches because of the desire I'd had to work with those brands in that capacity for many, many years. But that isn't essential. If we have a community that likes a certain type of watch, generally the Fratelli like steel sports watches. That's like a pretty simple way of putting it, but generally that's the case. And we say, okay, we can create a watch or a capsule collection with a brand over a long-term period of time, and we can have it available in the shop. And if they like it, they can buy it, and it marks them as like a follower of Fratello, but also just as a lover of a well-designed watch. I don't think we really want to cultivate the whole status idea of limited editions, and we certainly want to try and discourage flippers, because that was depressing. Because some of our watches that we sold last year, and all of our watches sold out very quickly, appeared on pre-owned marketplaces shortly after they'd been delivered. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because...
Why?
Because we'd annoyed the community in some ways by not making enough of these pieces.
But it's good for the brand, no?
It's good for the brand, it actually is, and that's a horrible thing. But I would really like to not have to play into that sales psychology.
I don't get it. I really disagree here on that, because I think, and we talked about that as well, and yesterday you told me you're gonna get the new Snoopy edition, and the second sentence was, it's already on 34,000 on the grey market.
Well, I was trying to sell it to you over the dinner table, yeah. But
I mean, people are bragging with that, you know. They're saying, this is always the topic what watch nerds as we have. Yeah, it's really bad that Rolexes and other brands are getting that much attention to, and then the price on the pre-owned market goes so high. But intentionally, they really want that watch. They're just jealous they don't get it, you know?
Yeah, you're right in some ways, and you're right about some people, but not everybody is approaching that subject in the same way.
But everybody likes to buy something that goes high in price.
Not always.
Why not?
Your impression of me when I said, it's already 34,000.
It was exactly like that.
It was 32,000 is what I said.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. What I meant by that was, I'm not comfortable with it being so expensive now. That does not necessarily create a good environment for a watch lover to buy and wear a watch and enjoy it. It's an expensive watch to begin with.
Because you don't wear it?
Because it's too expensive. It suddenly becomes an insurance concern. You know, it's a ridiculous thing to have to consider, but it's also true. Like RJ is in a situation with his Speedmaster collection where the majority of them live in the bank constantly, and he can't take them anywhere. He can't have them at home.
But the insurance is paying you the market price?
I mean, if you wanted to like risk it, like taking a watch like that out of the safe or keeping it around, you would be running the massive risk of losing it. And there are specific watch insurances that do track the market price. I believe Hodinkee has actually been involved in founding one of those, and it's quite a sophisticated system. So yeah, you could have an insurance like that. It costs a bomb to insure a watch like that, but it's intimidating. Like if you wear a watch, so the regular Speedmaster now is about 5,000 or 6,000 euros.
Okay.
And that's a lot of money for a lot of people, for the majority of people. But if you're into watches and you know what goes into it and why watches cost what they cost, and you feel comfortable buying that, that is a watch that I think you would feel comfortable wearing and not being too scared about scratching it or damaging it.
But then you buy a cheap watch. If you're focused on just wearing it, or you buy like a mid-priced watch, which doesn't have it. I mean, there is so many brands out there.
Yeah, but what if you want to buy a watch like Snoopy, which is an expensive watch, around 9,500 euros, 9,600 francs, I think. But then when you get it home, by the time you get it home, after waiting for 18 months or however long it is I've been waiting for mine, and you look at it and you're like, I want to wear this now. I am comfortable at this point in my collecting career to buy a 9,500 euro watch. It's expensive. It means I can't buy many other watches anytime soon.
Or no food.
Or no food, yeah.
For the next couple of months.
Priorities. So it's expensive, it is, but I was willing to go for that watch because I loved it as soon as I saw it. But now it's become something other than just a watch. And that's in the back of my mind. And I never buy a watch to sell it. But also you are sometimes comfortable spending a lot of money on a watch because you know that you could check out of it if you needed to at any point. It's a pretty reliable currency, especially a watch of limited production like that. But it's almost too expensive now on the pre-sale market for me to feel comfortable wearing it to the pub or randomly out. Because I think about losing it or scratching it or getting mugged in a way that I never do with other watches that aren't that expensive. Because I wouldn't spend 34,000 euros on a watch. Even if I had 34,000 euros, I wouldn't spend it.
Gotcha.
But now I have a watch, or will have a watch in a couple of hours, that's going to be effectively worth that. And that does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I'll probably wear it around the house for a few months until I start to get okay with it. I'm serious.
Skiing.
I definitely won't be wearing it when I go skiing. Definitely not. But I like to wear my watches. I like to enjoy them. I like to knock them around. I like being outdoors. I like putting myself in those situations where a watch might get scratched, and I don't want to scratch that watch. So it does bother me, in a weird way.
And I also think you like tool watches, right? This is why you're wearing a Fortis
type of tool watch. Yeah, and I absolutely adore this one. Yeah.
Why do you like this watch?
Well, it really grew on me. It wasn't a watch that I liked from the first moment I saw it. I didn't get it at first. I didn't realize how enjoyable the case was, the hooded lugs, particularly the way that the metal bends so consistently and the light plays with it, and the chamfers on the lugs is something that I never get bored of. Normally, I talk about the dial being that endlessly engaging element of a watch, but in this instance, it's the case really that gets me back again and again. And I did scratch it actually soon after I got it. I put a ding on the.
It was not the last one, I guess.
I put a ding on the bezel somewhere, like a little pip on the side of it.
Fortis is made for that.
Yeah,
it's a tool watch itself.
Between the 35 and 40 minute marker. So sometimes I just remind myself I turn the bezel so it catches the light when I look at the watch, and I'm like, yeah, it's been in the wars.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I heard you really like, so in fact your favorite watch is a skeletonized dial with a helium valve, right?
You obviously have been reading what I've been writing, because that made me physically sick. God. I generally hate skeletonized dials, although I'm coming round to the idea of a more open-worked chronograph mechanism visible on the dial side. But I don't like being able to see through a watch because I have too much arm hair. It's gross. I'm like, why is there like a small gorilla inside my luxury watch? It looks horrible.
And what do you think about the helium valve?
What do I think about it? Well, I do kind of like over-engineered watches, but the presence of a helium valve to me is an unnecessary weakness in most cases. Unless you are a saturation diver, I would probably not bother with it at all.
So if you had a watch brand, I'm sure you will have one.
That's the last plan.
So watchmaker, sales manager.
Where else is there to go now?
Journalist? Do you see yourself as a journalist?
Certainly did see myself as a journalist, yeah. I suppose now I'm more in brand liaison.
Okay, then.
Whatever.
More in like editorial stuff involved. And then you go back to, oh yeah, maybe I will create my own watch brand. How would that look like?
How would my watch brand look like?
Yeah.
Well, I have some very clear ideas of what it would look like, obviously. Like, it's always been on my mind. And I would like to do something that I think will be more popular in the industry in the next few years, and something people aren't maybe talking about as much as they should. And you and I discussed this yesterday in the car also.
What is that?
Well, that is cross-collaboration between brands. Now, the real precedent for this is MB&F. And Max Pusser has done this very nicely to bring luminaries in the field of watchmaking together to create something other, something special that stands out. And I would like to do that, but on a more affordable level. So I'm talking sub 10,000, working with some of the brands that I have developed very close relationships with professionally and personally over the last however many years of working in the industry.
But wristwatches and not table clocks.
100%. No, I'm not interested in clocks. I thought about trying to design a clock once, but it's just not something I can turn my mind to at all. Very strange. I have no ideas, none whatsoever. With a watch, plenty. With a clock, useless. But yeah, with wristwatches, with brands that I've worked with, brands that I really believe in, what I'd like to do is to put the brands who are contributing to my brand front and center of the project, for them to be like the stars of the show, for them to be the ambassadors, for each element that they make for my project to be the story of their brand. So let's take Moritz Grossman as an example, because that's the brand that definitely won't want to work with me on this project. But they have beautiful hands, and I regard the best thing about a Moritz Grossman movement to be the hands. And so I would say to them, you know what, make the hands for this project, and we will do all of the media plan around those hands and around how excellent that is. And so people get to know your brand through the provision of this component for my brand.
And the dial will be focused from another brand.
Yeah.
And the case from another brand. So it's kind of a mishmash between brands.
Yeah.
And you focus on one USP of a brand.
So you focus on taking the USP of brands that you like to work with and then bringing that into your watch. So you're effectively creating like a super watch made of like 5 or 6 different brands all cobbled together under the brand name.
What would you take from Fortis?
Case, I think I would take to be honest, right off the top of my head. I think, well, I love this is recycled steel, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love this case. I love the story behind it. I love the way it wears, and the crispness of the machining is perfect. So yeah, definitely case, because if there's one thing you can rely on with a Fortis is it can stand up to a beating. And even though the watch I have in mind is maybe a little dressier than a Fortis, in the first instance, the case still has to be, flawless in my opinion.
Yeah, you puts definitely a lot of knowledge into the case making with Marcel in the production department.
It's obvious. It really is. I mean, they're very different to look at. I'd say something like when you hold a Fortis and you look at it from the side, as an object, you think that's quite tall. How's that going to feel on the wrist? And then when you put it on, you realize that there is incredible balance within that case, which is a lot more symmetrical across all planes than many cases in the industry. And the aesthetics are just great. So finishing's superb.
So one of the last questions, which is really in my heart, and I always ask this question to people I like and who are very interesting, and I think you are that. What is something that nobody is talking about nowadays or today, but will be big in 5 to 10 years? It could be outside the watch industry. Or
I don't know anything about the world outside the watch industry at all.
So let's stay there.
Nothing. And, people are talking about a lot of things. Some are whispers, some are cries from rooftops of what needs to be done, whether they're right or wrong, I don't know. I think, cross-brand collaboration is something that I think will be bigger.
Like in the sneakers market?
Yeah, exactly. Within and without the industry. I think, watchmaking's always been amazing at talking to people that know it exists. Always been great at preaching to the converted. If you are a fan of watchmaking, you can get plenty of content from all different media channels. Always been the case. Watchmaking has always been terrible at breaking out of its own bubble and expanding its horizons and trying to attract new audiences and tap into new demographics. And I think that this cross-brand collaboration, as I see it, and even cross-industry collaboration, can have huge benefits, knock-on effects, not just for the brands themselves that are doing it, but also for all the other brands that are associated with watchmaking. And I think we'll see that more, and I think core to those collaborations will be an element of sustainability, which I think is something that people are talking about now, very much so. And the old guard in watchmaking is maybe, turning their nose up at it a little bit and thinking, can you have a luxury vegan strap? Yeah, you can. We just need to invest a little bit more time and money into that material development. It's totally possible. I believe at Geneva Watch Days last year, Grupo Force showed their new line, which our team saw. I missed it, but they said that strap was one of the highlights of the whole fair.
It was a vegan strap?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I need to get one in my hands to see how legit it is, but they were all passionate. They all came back. I said, how was the watch? And they went, oh, that's a strap. The strap was amazing. And these are guys that are also a bit cynical about that kind of thing, because our team is relatively old and we've all been in the industry for quite a while. And so, we're a little entrenched in our sort of views of what luxury is and, what it always has been. And so we have to work really hard to broaden our own minds for the next generation to say, how can we turn our beliefs into something that's relevant for the next generation?
Do you already have a brand in mind outside of the watch industry which would be suitable for Fortis or for other brands? Sneaker brands, it's so vast. The diversity is huge, what they have. They go from, even Lidl had a sneaker.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to buy it. Weirdly.
You're not a sneakerhead, right?
I am a little bit.
Okay.
I collect Adidas, but I also wear them to death, so I'm not too precious about it. I love the designs.
Okay.
But I kind of wanted to buy the little thing. I didn't.
So which corporations did you admire? And which one would you consider for the watch industry?
For Fortis, if I'm thinking about a brand that I'd like to see, something like Greville, like a climbing brand, like someone that makes proper tools, that a watch could be part of that arsenal. And you think of strong collars and how you could do that crossover, and it kind of writes itself. Clothing brands, extreme equipment suppliers for expeditions. Peak Performance, for example, something like that. You could do all sorts of great collabs. I think it helps when the product for which, or the products for which both brands are known, are in a relatively similar price point. So with watchmaking, obviously that means you have to go quite high end, but there's a ton of stuff that could be done, A skiing brand, Atomic, for example. This is the perfect watch for skiing. Better than an Apple Watch. Much more fun to wear, much more fun to enjoy. I think something like that would be really cool. I'll tell you, the biggest brand collaboration that dropped on my radar recently was the Adidas and Meissen porcelain collaboration.
What's that?
So Meissen's near Dresden, where I live, and this very famous porcelain maker in Germany, and Adidas did a collab with them, which had like a porcelain design painted onto the shoe. It's gross. It's awful. Took me right back to 17 years old in H. Samuels. It sold out in a heartbeat, like, because all of these Meissen buyers, which are generally middle-aged to ancient German people, were like, oh, I finally get like why these Adidas shoes are so cool. Even though Adidas is a famous German brand in itself, that doesn't tap into that demographic naturally. And yeah, they were gone. Like that. And I bet you that people who collected Adidas and like street art and whatnot saw a little bit of that in that shoe and bought it and learnt about Meissen for the first time.
Right.
And then maybe they get connected to that. And as they get older, they go, oh, well, this is old and it's traditional. And this is what people buy for people in this situation. Perfect example of how it can work.
Okay. So it goes more into cooperation in the next 5 to 10 years, you think?
I think it has to, yeah. And I think we'll see a lot of brands disappear as well. New ones pop up all the time, short-lived, day in the sun, gone. But the big brands will get bigger and more consolidated, and then these cooperations across industries will increase.
But your collection is quite impressive. You have over 75 pieces?
I think I have almost exactly 75 now. I'm trying to slim it down, but it's a nightmare. I mean, talk about first world problems, or first world problems, if I started calling them, because I'm sitting there with my little watch boxes and looking at them going, oh, well, I love this one, and this one means this to me. And now there's about, let me think, 5 or 6 pieces that I've designed or been involved
Where do you
with.
put all the boxes?
In a safe, of course.
That's
guarded,
a big safe.
I mean, not in my house, in like in a bank vault. Okay. Because there's too many boxes now. And I look at them, and there's about 5 or 6 watches that I designed myself or even was involved in bringing to market. And I think, well, these are my babies. I can't get rid of these. This is my portfolio. This is like when I retire from the industry in 10 or 15 years or whatever and go and sit on my kayak somewhere and drink whiskey all day. I know, that's the dream. I want that to be my legacy. It sounds a bit grandiose maybe, but like when you start something, you have an end goal in mind, and that is mine when it comes to these collaborations. But then beyond that, I've got my Speedmasters and I've got my L'Aventure watches, which I love very much. I've got my Fortis. I didn't design this. I had nothing to do with it. And yet, am I going to get rid of this at some point, given what this means to me? When I fell in love with it, when we were in Sweden together working on that fantastic project? No, of course not. This watch is the closest to any watch I own that I think represents why people often buy watches, to mark a moment in time or to encapsulate, to create a time capsule of a moment or a relationship. So that's never going anywhere. My Breitling Aerospace, which I never thought I would own.
It was your first mechanical watch, right? A hybrid.
Well, I mean, it's a quartz. It was one of my first luxury watches. It was the first one that I ever wore because my friend Aaron Shirley, also a watchmaker and in the WASTEP course at the same time as me, he was a Breitling student and he owned one of these old bicolor Aerospaces, and he let me wear it for our graduation. And it always stuck with me that like one day when I have a bit of money, I'll buy myself a Breitling Aerospace. And I got my hands on one for a crazy cheap price in a sale in a couple of years ago. And I adore it. And when I look around the watches that it sits next to, all these mechanical pieces or pieces I've designed myself or pieces that really like themselves, like this, mean a lot to me, it seems like, well, maybe the Breitling could go. But then the minute I think about removing that from my collection, I'm dragged back to my graduation at 2012, and I'm like, no, I can't. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to stop at some point. So, yeah.
Maybe you will reach to 100 in the next couple of years. I'm sure you will.
If it carries on at this pace, then I will. But I think that realistically, I have to just reduce the volume somehow. I mean, I have 20 Casios, I think, within that 75 pieces, like G-Shocks, all collectible ones, all limited editions with all the boxes, and I barely worn them. The only Casios I actually wear are my Mudmasters. And I have 2, and I'm about to buy a 3rd, so I probably should stop doing that if I want to reduce my collection.
Last question.
Okay.
What would you wish from Fortis in the near future?
I would like,
From a customer perspective.
from a customer
Yeah.
perspective, I want you to carry on doing what you're doing, but more of it. I want more colours of the new models, like the Marine Master. I think that you launched with a really interesting, quite daring colourway for the Marine Master.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the most conservative of the bunch, probably. Maybe the grey
The grey one, yeah.
Yeah, the grey one's pretty muted, but also super versatile. The blue, which is really the stunner of the collection, in my opinion, is a very unusual blue. Probably not the most commercial, but the kind of watch that you definitely want to see in a window. The green one is gorgeous, and on the block bracelet, it is an absolute dream. But I'd like to see a couple more colours in that line, some more like regular colours. I'd like to see some special edition hook straps, because I love hook straps and they're super comfortable. And one day I will wear this on a hook strap, I think. And beyond that, I think Yop and you guys have all taken great pains in the last few years to really redefine what the Fortis brand is. And I think you have laid an amazing foundation across all the collections. And I think it's, you know, you're primed for new models as and when you see an opportunity to create something you haven't done before. Maybe look into the extensive history of Fortis and pull something back from the past and bring it, give it new life within this new canon that you've created.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob.
My pleasure, as always.
Great. I have something left for you. Last questions.
Okay, this is the last question.
This was the last, like, you know, slow question, I would say. But I have quick questions for Rob Nudds. I put down quick Rob Nudds. Don't Google that. So,
Certainly not when in company.
Okay.
No. Okay.
only one answer. One word.
One word.
Yeah. Dresden or Manchester?
Manchester.
Jean-Claude Beaver or Georges Kern?
Beaver.
Yup or Jesus?
Yup. Easy.
Tom Brady or Jerry Rice?
Tom Brady.
Cristiano Ronaldo or David Beckham?
Beckham.
Panda or giraffe?
Giraffe.
Tories or Labour?
Labour. Ask me again.
Cheese or peanut butter?
Cheese. Oh God. Love one. The other one would kill me.
German rap or K-pop?
German rap.
Patek or Lange?
Lange.
Office or remote?
Remote.
Zurich Airport or JFK?
JFK.
Taxi or Uber?
Uber.
Apple Watch or Marmite?
Push.
You need to answer that.
Apple Watch.
Thank you so much, Rob. It was fun.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Great.